You know, some of my videos are kind of soft and fluffy. This is not going to be that video. Well, hello brothers and sisters, welcome to Mission Zero. My name is Shawn, and this is Battle Cry. This is the show where we kind of talk through a theme for the week that will help you give some motivation and carry you through the week in a stronger way. So today what we're going to talk about is cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is kind of shortcuts that your brain takes to more efficiently process the loads and loads of information that it's constantly going through. So the interesting thing about cognitive bias is if you go to Wikipedia and look for the list of cognitive biases, there's like 180 of them. And they range all the way from IKEA bias, where you believe that something is worth more because you assemble it yourself, all the way up to really complicated things like some of what we're going to talk about today. Today what I want to talk about are 4 cognitive biases that are absolutely devastating to humanity and things that we really need to watch out for. Confirmation bias, negativity bias, status quo bias, and observer-actor bias. So confirmation bias says that if you believe a thing, or if you're convinced of a thing, you will tend to seek out only information that adds to that belief, and you will completely reject anything that is counter to it. As it comes to society and sort of the cohesion of people, which is the thing I spend all of my time talking about, this is a real linchpin one, because it makes us's into thems. And all confirmation bias does is drive the us's and the thems that much further apart, which then ties a bit to status quo bias. Status quo bias is also sometimes called golden age thinking. It's this belief that what's always been is the best way to do it. And this is really the thing that Gen X came along and said, F that, we're not going to deal with this. Because if you think about that, if you take confirmation bias and you add it to status quo bias, you have an opinion that you will not change, that the old ways were the better ways. But we all know that that's not true. Just the shift in the last 10 years, 11 years and change since the smartphone was invented, everything about our way of life has changed. Status quo bias is in a current state of upheaval, but your brain still wants it to be the case. You still want to resist change, and this is your amygdala telling you that change is bad. Ooh, baby. It is toasty out here. Okay, so the third cognitive bias that I want to talk about is negativity bias. Negativity bias says that you will listen to and put more weight on negative information than positive information, right? If I tell you, I heard a rumor that you're going to be fired, you're going to put a lot more stock in that. You're going to have much more of a reaction to that than if I say, I heard a rumor that you're going to get a big bonus. We are trained to expect negative outcomes. Well, now add negativity bias to status quo bias and confirmation bias, and you've got a recipe for a really surly person who believes that the old ways are better, who believes that you are not going to change their mind, and believes that every bad thing that happens is just proof that any attempts to change are awful and nasty. Okay, so let's talk about the last bias, which is actor-observer bias. Actor-observer bias is potentially the most critical. What it says is that you will weigh your own actions at a lower level than you will weigh the actions of someone else. And to give you an example of this, say you're working on the job and you make a mistake. You're going to point out every reason why that mistake is just minor and people need to let it go and it was probably somebody else's fault anyway. But if Bob sitting next to you makes the exact same mistake, Bob is a flaming moron. And if you add these 4 together, what that creates is exactly what we have in society. It's a lot of people who believe that what they know to be true is absolutely right, you are absolutely wrong, and if you try and voice anything that is contrary to their opinion, now you have just committed a grievous act of war against them. So take, for example, this Kavanaugh-Ford thing, or the Clinton and Trump thing, or the Black Lives Matter and the police thing. All of these kind of third-rail issues that have come up recently, they are all a case where you can definitively see two sides, an us and a them. Confirmation bias kicks in. All you look for are the articles that talk about what you believe to be true, and you will filter out and invalidate all of the things that are counter to that. Your status quo tells you that, oh, the news sources you trust are the right ones. Anybody who would try and suggest a different news source to you, no, that's evil and wrong, and throw that away. Negativity bias, do you believe that rape is worse or some political agenda? These are all cases where we have not only created an us and them situation, but we have allowed these cognitive biases to drive the us and them so far apart that the only possibility left is war, and we cannot allow that to continue. And so what I want to say today is we have got to overcome this. For our republic, for our nation, for our world, for our church, for our basic humanity. These cognitive biases are inherent things that you tend to. They are not what you have to do. You can control these things. And so my exhortation for us for this week is question yourself. Listen more than you talk. Ask more questions than you make statements, because you just might find that those things that you are so sure of aren't exactly accurate, and you may change your opinion, and you may find common ground with another human being. That's the whole purpose of this whole thing. And so there's my message, and I know it may not be terribly popular because everybody would rather argue than just try and get along, but take this week and use it to be the you-iest you can be, to be an even you-ier you than you were before. And I love you, and may God pour out all of the blessings of heaven upon you. And man, I love you so much. Peace out.